Heels can't get the win at Kansas, but this wasn't about November. This was about building to March.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Monday, November 11th, 2024. Happy Veterans Day. Big thanks to those of you who have served our country. We are grateful to you. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you for making us your first listen or watch, and special shout out to all the everydayers, all the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members, and of course, our Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Let's get right into it. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Here's where we're going on the show today. Obviously, Kansas unfortunately beats Carolina 92-89 on Friday night at Allen Fieldhouse as an Elliot Cadeau 3 hits the front iron as time expires. We'll get to our Four Corners recap. We got the Shady stat of the game. I owe Jaylen Withers a massive apology, our weekend whip around. But first, let's talk about what this game was all about. This game against Kansas. Yes, you want to win. Yes, it's part of your schedule, all of that. But this is a game that sets you up and sets the tone for every other game the North Carolina Tar Heels will play in the 2024-25 season. If you can persevere through this, if you can handle this, if you can fight through this, you can persevere through anything that will come your way this season. This gives Hubert Davis something incredible to be able to call back to all season long. I loved Terrence Oglesby, who played at Clemson, if I remember correctly, but does Field of 68 stuff. He's on the Hornets broadcast or something with Hornet stuff. Anyway, he tweeted, quote, really encouraged by UNC basketball's second half effort. There's a lot of teams that would have folded and gotten drubbed in Fog Allen. Carolina is going to be so difficult to guard all year. This team is tough. This ain't no wine and cheese team in front of a wine and cheese crowd. This is not, there are some times when Carolina teams get described as soft. This team is not going to be that. A soft team does what Terrence said many, many other teams would have done in Carolina's situation on Friday night, but not this team. This team is ready to fight. And so I want to look at both parts. There was two different things Terrence said that stuck out to me, and I actually want to look at both parts of that. First, the second half effort, he talked about how there's a lot of teams that would have folded and gotten drubbed. The resolve that these Tar Heels showed to keep battling in that environment is something special, because a lot of times in this environment where you are down 20 points in the first half, at that point, it just becomes about respect and playing to learn things for tomorrow and the next day and all of that kind of stuff. But that wasn't good enough for Carolina. Instead, what Carolina did, and it sounds like there was some James Brown like forceful talk at halftime, which I love. The guys basically said, look, we just got to go play. We're tired of not being the aggressor. We're tired of, as Mark Campbell said in our post-game reaction, we're tired of not setting the terms of engagement. Let's go put this into our terms. And it's also not just the players, it's the coaching staff, right? The coaching staff could fold and start playing for another day and doing things for another day and saying, all right, fine, let's get some other guys in and whatever. This team almost won this basketball game. They were ahead with 3-something minutes to go. So kudos to everyone. And I love that the coaching staff said, oh, we have found something, a wrinkle here in the second half, and we're going to continue to go back to it over and over and over and make Hunter Dickinson guard all these ball screens and make Kansas figure out their rotations, and we're just going to abuse it. And again, as a reminder, Kansas led this game by 20 points with like a minute to go in the first half, 51-31. Carolina got it back to 15 at the half. But from the point of when Kansas led by 20, Carolina, from the point of 51-31, outscored Kansas 58-41 for the final 21 minutes of this game. That's great and encouraging, and you love that sign. The problem is Carolina needed that gap the rest of the game to be 4 points bigger, or to not have dug such a big hole in the first place, right? Figured out sooner. But I mean, that's how sports go. Sometimes it takes a while to find it. So that's the first thing from the Terrence Oglesby quote. And the second thing is he mentioned how difficult Carolina is going to be to guard. And I love this. I completely agree. And I love that he's seeing it. And I love that so many others are seeing it, because this offseason, there was so much, oh no, the front court, whatever shall we do of it all, right? There was so much of that, but I don't think there was enough of, forget that. These other teams are going to have to guard us. This goes both ways. So let's just go out and do what we do really well and might make life incredibly difficult for our opponent. And to that point, how is this 3-guard lineup faring? Per Trevor William Marks on Twitter, quote, UNC has a plus 36.8 net rating, 130.6 offense, 93.8 defensive rating in the 47 minutes that the Cadeau, Davis, Trimble 3-guard lineup has been on the floor. And that's per CBB Analytics, end quote. For frame of reference, if you don't know what any of those numbers mean, just know this. Those 3 guards together have been incredibly efficient in the 47 minutes they played. I hope you're encouraged by that, because there's all this consternation. Can these 3 small guards do it? They're doing it so far, and they just did it against the number 1 team in America on their floor. This athleticism. And keep in mind, Carolina is already this difficult to guard without Cade Tyson having figured it out yet. With Ian Jackson and Drake Powell at this point just kind of showing some glimpses, but they're still working on it, right? Like all of this, and yet you're feeling so good about how good Carolina's offensive dynamism is going to be. And also, I think part of that too is that we're all having to recalibrate what we're used to seeing. Well, guess what? So are other teams, and that's going to also make Carolina's offense more potent, because they're like, wait, this ain't my grandmother's Carolina team. How do I guard that, right? Like, and so that is to the Tar Heels' advantage. But ultimately, back to my first point, this game sets you up for the rest of the season. Part of that means you're going to have some lessons to take away. So what did we learn? Just a couple things on that. This team is capable of playing with anyone, anywhere, at any time. How do you know that? Because they just did. They just proved to themselves and everyone that was watching that they could go to what is widely considered one of the most difficult places in the country to play against what right now was the number 1 team in America, and had a shot to win this ball game. What was right there. A couple more plays going Carolina's favor down the stretch. We're sitting 2-0 with a win over Kansas right now. So number 1, that's great. 2, another thing that you can learn from this is, if you're the coaching staff, you're reminding your players there is no environment you will play in this season that will be more difficult. There are others that might match, like Cameron might match it, but it will not exceed it. Nothing will be more difficult. So you've already seen that in game 2. So be encouraged, young men, because you can handle anything. Third, here's the really cool thing. Carolina also learned that they are capable of making a difficult environment like that decidedly less difficult. Here's what I mean. As Carolina made this crazy run, not only got back, but took the lead, you could even hear it. If you were watching on TV, you could hear it back through the TV speakers. Carolina's comeback sucked the life out of the Jayhawk faithful. The most beautiful sound there is on the road, stunned silence. And that's what Carolina did to the Jayhawks. A couple other questions that people had asked me, by the way, before we move on to the Four Corners recap. End of game stuff. Isaac, do you think Hubert Davis should have taken a timeout there at the very end of the game? There are times when I think yes, and I think part of me is inclined to say that once you realized that Kansas was blowing up the play and you weren't going to be able to get the ball to RJ, because even though he didn't shoot well, I still want him taking that last 3 to try to tie the game. I could see a world in which once you realize that that play's blown up, call your timeout, get a new play in for him to get a three. But also, again, as I said, this game was not about November. It was about March. So I also kind of like not calling a timeout here, letting your guys go and see what happens. Because there is something that Elliot Cadeau learned from having to take that three that he's going to be able to call back to in January or February or March. And look, it was a good look at like kudos to Elliot for getting that shot off because it was not easy. And I tell you, it looked good out of his hand. I was like, I was already thinking about overtime and what was going to happen, but man, fell just shy of that. On the flip side of that, the one I was confused about is Kansas not fouling up three. I'm a big foul up three proponent. Like Wake Forest did that really well on multiple occasions on Sunday against Michigan. And so I was surprised by that. And I know some coaches just aren't believers in it. And I can't remember if Bill Self is a don't foul up three guy. I would have fouled there. I wouldn't have let Elliot Cadeau take that shot. That said, Kansas played some great defense. So kudos to them there. All right, guys. So really, really encouraged by that. Carolina learned a lot. Yes, it was a loss, but they learned a lot and realized that they can play with anyone. We'll take that lesson learned. That's going to help season long. Now, Four Corners recap is coming up next, including Carolina landing on a starting lineup that I missed by a wide margin this summer. We'll talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page right there where you place your bets. Maui is like 2 weeks away from right now. Can you believe that? Here's the odds for it for all 8 teams. I'll give you the least chance of winning it to best. Colorado, not very good this year. Plus 5,500. Dayton, plus 4,000. Memphis, plus 3,000. Michigan State, plus 1,300. And then we get into the teams that have better odds. Iowa State, plus 430. Carolina, plus 400, Auburn 310, and UConn plus 170. So if you want to get in on that action, maybe battle for Atlantis, anything else, go ahead, check it out at FanDuel.com today. And again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Again, that's FanDuel.com, where you don't waste a hunch and go make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Time for our Four Corners recap, where we honor legendary Carolina coach Dean Smith with a nod to his legendary Four Corners offense. Number 1 in the Four Corners recap. I think we got our starting 5, folks, and I got to tell you, I got 60% of it right this offseason, and I kind of love that, right? I want to be right about things. I never mind owning when I'm wrong, and in fact, I think it's important for me to do so that you all know that I'm being honest and transparent with you. In fact, if there are things that I get wrong, that I don't realize or something, please call me out, because I want to get those things right and set the record straight. Anyway, I did not have this summer either Seth Trimble or Jaylen Withers in my starting lineup. But here we are. And the starting lineup is Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis, Seth Trimble, and then the Jalen show, Jalen Withers and Jalen Washington. And from what we've seen so far in these first 2 games, that leads me to believe that for the time being, and it seems like the foreseeable future, I don't see it changing for a while, this is going to be your starting 5. And also, it seems to be the right starting 5. There's something with that Cade Tyson's not settled in, not ready. Something's going on to where he's not fully up to speed. I think at least at this point, for both Drake Powell and Ian Jackson, it's going to be to their benefit to take a couple minutes to let the game get settled in and see things. And I just think the experience of these other guys is to Carolina's advantage for the starting 5. And then you do what you need to do, matchups and stuff as the game goes along. But, if you're wondering, is Hubert Davis really going to roll with this 3-guard lineup? I think so. I think that I'm calling it 3G. It's here to stay. And the Jalen's, it seems like that's what it's going to be. I think Jalen Washington gives you some more ceiling and upside over Van Allen Lubin right now. There's a lot that Van Allen Lubin can add to this team, but I think it's better coming off the bench. And so ultimately, folks, I think we got our starting five, and that's what we're rolling with. Four corners recap number 2. Yes, this is a loss, but here's something. In this game, Elliot Cadeau, 3 of 11 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3. RJ Davis, 3 of 15 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3. If anything, I wish Elliot had taken more threes in this game. But combined, your starting 1 and 2 guards were 6 for 26 from the field and 1 of 10 from 3. And I left Seth Trimble out of those numbers because his were slightly better. But for Elliot and RJ, I'm actually painting this in a positive light because Carolina was able to make this comeback that they did despite your starting returning backcourt going 6 of 26 from the field and 1 of 10 from 3. That to me is an encouraging sign because that's not going to be RJ Davis's shooting numbers game in and game out. Now, obviously, what is encouraging is that despite the shooting struggles from the field, neither of them, nor Seth Trimble, allowed themselves to be affected at the free throw line, where those 3 guys combined shot really well, including, we didn't just talk about Seth's shooting, but he was 10 of 10 from the free throw line. And we'll get to free throws more later on. But man, I look at this and I'm like, yes, you want these guys to shoot better, but you want them shooting. Even on cold days, that's your best shooter in RJ particular. And you want him to be putting it up. And so I feel encouraged that Carolina had the performance they did despite the lack of shooting, or despite the lack of making, I guess I should say from these 2 guys. Number 3 in our 4 corners recap. Let's not bury the lead. Carolina led the rebounding battle 40-39. And look, that doesn't tell the whole tale of the front court because for Carolina, it's an all-in, all hands on deck rebounding situation this year. But for all of the front court, this was a game we had circled where it's like, all right, we're going to find out in game 2 as the Tar Heels go up against Hunter Dickinson and freshman Flory Badunga, who I was really impressed by the way. You probably were too. And in the first half, I thought these guys didn't live up to the billing really at all. Outside of James Brown, the entire front court had multiple fouls assigned to them, which is why James Brown got some minutes at the end of the first half. But the Tar Heels came out and did what they needed to do, stymied Hunter Dickinson enough in the second half by forcing him to do so much, chasing the ball around defensively. And that's what you're encouraging. Now, he still had a good second half, 4 of 9 from the field, 5 of 6 from the free throw line, 13 points and 5 boards. But Carolina did enough, especially on the glass, to mitigate that. And that's encouraging. And, you take the combination of Carolina's front court in the second half, the Jaylens combined for 16 points and 14 rebounds just in the second half. And so that was what I had asked them to do, is just like, just be able to match what Dickinson's doing. And I know that's 2 different positions against one, but still, Carolina out-rebounded Kansas at Kansas with this front court that is so like, hey, I don't know. Clearly, Carolina is all bought in on making this a team effort. Are they going to be the rebounding juggernaut that they usually are? No, they're not. But they can do this consistently. And I love it. The athleticism is a big part of that. 4th and finally in our 4 corners recap, I need to apologize to Jaylen Withers. I doubted it. I put this man, when we did his preview this offseason, I put him 9th on Carolina's depth chart. I did. And here he is starting, as we've just talked about. Here he is, Jaylen Withers, 1 rebound shy against Kansas of starting the season with back-to-back double-doubles. And I love to be wrong about things like that, right? Like if I'm forecasting something to be bad and I'm wrong about it, I'm elated with that. That makes me so happy. And, there's still been a couple things from Jaylen that have been like, yeah, but for the most part, it's been the good Jaylen Withers, the consistency. The first half of this game against Kansas didn't give a ton. Second half, man, was awesome. So good from him. But one thing I did get right about Jaylen Withers, and almost jokingly so this summer, was his three-point shooting. Because Jaylen Withers has bounced back and forth in his career so far between good and bad three-point shooting every other year. So this was the year he was due for good three-point shooting. And again, it's only 2 games in, but boy, has it been good. And look, hear me, it's total coincidence, the bouncing back and forth. But it is kind of a funny data set. His freshman year at Louisville, 38.1%. The next year, 23.4%. His junior year at Louisville, 41.7%. Last year at Carolina, 20%. So he's either been 38% or higher or 23% and lower. Nothing in between, where it feels like most of America lives. And so then this year, Jaylen's off to a 62.5% start on obviously a very small sample size. But here's what's crazy. Last year made 4 threes the entire season. Jaylen Withers did. Yes, all of 23-24, just 4 threes for Jaylen Withers. He's already made 5 this year in just the first 2 games. That is bonkers. So hopefully this is a sign of things to come. And I know I joke about the back and forth, but maybe this will be a good shooting year for Jaylen Withers. And if so, that ups Carolina's ceiling and their floor, to be honest. So encouraged by that. But ultimately, I apologize to you, sir, Jaylen Withers, for for doubting where you would be on this depth chart. Keep it rocking, my dude. All right, look, here's the deal. Carolina had a great effort on Friday at Kansas, but it wasn't a win. We need to own that, and we need to reckon with that a little bit, because it's not all sunshine and roses. So we'll talk about that, Shady stat of the game, and of course, the weekend whip around where Carolina had an ACC championship as part of a so far undefeated season. We'll talk about all of that in just a second. Right after I tell you about Game Time, the college basketball season is here. You guys, there's absolutely nothing better than the atmosphere of a college basketball game. The anticipation of what's going to happen, the energy of the crowd, like you could just feel it as that game started Friday night at Allen Fieldhouse. The unexpected happening. You didn't know what kind of historic things were going to happen. Well, thankfully, when you want tickets for moments like that, there's an app called Game Time to help you get it at a great price. And great news, when you're getting tickets for this year, Game Time has this new feature called Game Time Picks with curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, but not only that, but also concerts, comedy, theater, and more. So whether it's the Game Time ticket coverage, the lowest price guarantee, or the panoramic views from your seat, they're right in the app. Game Time, man, they got you covered. Carolina hosting American on Friday night. I found tickets on the Game Time app for as cheap as $28. But if you want to get into the lower bowl, you can do that for under $90. That's great. Go check it out. Go support the Heels Friday night. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. I've thus far on the show today painted a really rosy picture of what happened Friday night at Allen Fieldhouse, and for good reason. Like there is some moral victory in that. And you know me, I'm a glass half full kind of guy, so that's kind of where I'm going to lean into more often than not. But while I do have gratefulness for the moral victory, man, it stinks not to get this win. Because at the end of the day, whether Carolina ended up losing by 30 or 3, it's still an L in the record book. Carolina is not 2-0, they're 1-1. And it's frustrating because I'm tired of losing to Kansas. This is the 5th loss in a row in this series. And keep in mind, like, they could have won each of the last 2, one of which would have netted the Tar Heels a national championship. Yeah, that's tough, man. And think about, here's the other thing. Like, I thought a lot this weekend ahead to Selection Sunday. And had Carolina won this game, they would be talking about, like, in all the bracketology leading up, like if Carolina was in the mix for a 1 seed and they're comparing resumes, everyone would be able to say, man, I don't know, but you know what Carolina has? Probably the best non-conference win out of anybody, because they went and won at Kansas. And Kansas is going to be there all season long. They might not be number 1 all season long, but this is like a top 10 season-long team. And so had Carolina got this win, it would be a massive resume boost and legitimately would have held up as, if not the best, like a top 3 non-con win all season long for any team in America. So that's the bummer in this thing, man, is you really would have set yourself up well for seeding stuff and for resume building. Like a true road win over Kansas, come on, like nobody wins at Allen Fieldhouse. And what not winning this game does now is puts a lot more pressure on your other high-profile non-conference games, like Maui. Dayton is the first game. Do not overlook that team, by the way. Dayton is a very good basketball team. So Carolina's going to have to go to war in game 1. And then win or lose, you're either going to play Auburn, who you just saw just put up a fight against Houston on Saturday night and win in Houston, not like a true road game, but at Toyota Center where the Rockets play. And if not them, Iowa State, who's very good. Carolina owes them some revenge as well. And then your third game is either against back-to-back national champ UConn, Michigan State, Memphis, Colorado, whatever. But then, you got Florida, you got UCLA, and then the one that we all have circled, and the game I want more than any other is that Alabama game. Dadgummit, like, how did we get to this point where Alabama game is the game I want more than like any other game than the Duke games in the regular season? But there's just, by not being able to hold on after Carolina came back, it just puts more pressure on each one of those games. And all the same, let me paint one more positive thing. Carolina earned respect this weekend from the national media, from other teams, and funnily enough, and perhaps most importantly, from the Tar Heel fan base, who so many people, I think, again, just because of the difference of personnel this year, just didn't trust it yet. And so hopefully now we can all see that this is a team that can compete, man. This is a team that has everything, like the pieces they need. You can do this. Whatever this is, you can do it. So that's encouraging. All right. It's time for the Shady stat of the game. I got to get my shades on for it. Get those ring lights in there for those of you seeing it on YouTube. Yes, love it. Free throws. That is our Shady stat of the game. North Carolina at Kansas went 28 of 31 at the free throw line. 90.3%, man. That and the reason I make that the Shady stat of the game is because I firmly believe the Tar Heels need to live at the free throw line. Start paying rent to whomever runs the paint at the free throw line at each arena you go into this year, because that's where Carolina needs to camp out. So far this season, the 2 games combined, small sample size, of course, but 87.2% at the free throw line as a team. That's 8th best in the nation. And I don't know if you can hold that up. But man, it's good. And it's a low sample size right now, but all of 3G, and again, that's kind of my nickname right now for Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis, and Seth Trimble. All of 3G is shooting over 85% individually from the line this season. And that's going to be the guys that take the majority of free throws this year. Again, that's part of the different type of personnel, is it's the guards driving, getting there, and doing it. And look, obviously RJ is the best free throw shooter literally in Carolina history, but Elliot and Seth came into this year not as great career free throw shooters, but they're both doing a bang up job so far. So really encouraged by that. Carolina, go live at the free throw line and keep connecting on them. I want to see that every single game. Man, 31 free throws at Kansas. That's great. All right, weekend whip around. Let's get to the rest of Carolina athletics. ACC championship, baby. On Friday, Aaron Matson and the field hockey team stay undefeated on the season, now 18-0. They beat Boston College 4-1 in the championship game. Was a lot of fun. 8th straight ACC championship for the ladies, 27th overall. Charlie Bruder, who's just been killing it, is the MVP. And so great stuff there. Also, I forgot to check. I was trying to wait to record until late Sunday night because the NCAA was going to actually put out the bracket so that we know who they're playing. Let's see if I can pull that up really quick in real time. Stay with me, everybody. I'm trying to sing to make you stay interested while I look this up. Field hockey. Okay, here we go. And the field hockey championship, by the way, the bracket is just 16 teams. Like round one is the Sweet 16. So Carolina will be at home. They are the number one overall seed over Northwestern. Take that. And we'll host the winner of Delaware and Fairfield. It's going to be 11 a.m. on ESPN Plus. What's the date? November 15th. And so that's Friday. Okay, Friday, 11 a.m., Carolina, first round. And then the next round will be Sunday. So stay dialed in for that. Way to go, field hockey. All right, next. From one team that won an ACC championship to another, man, that fell just short. Women's soccer team on Thursday evening beat number one in the nation, Duke, 2-1. It was a great late goal for Carolina to win. It was beautiful and glorious, and I loved it, especially because Duke had knocked off the Tar Heels twice earlier this season. But unfortunately, on Sunday against number 6 Florida State, the Tar Heels fell just shy. They took a 2-1 lead into halftime, but then FSU got 2 goals after the break within like 5 minutes of each other, and Carolina just couldn't get anything in the net, unfortunately. So they're now 16-5. That bracket is going to be revealed today, Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. By the way, men's soccer team, theirs isn't till next Monday, so we wait to see what happens there. Volleyball. Man, we said it was going to be a tough weekend, and it was. Lost at number 1 nationally, Pitt, 3-0, got skunked there. Then went to number 10 SMU and lost 3-1. So it's just hard going on the road to play 2 top 10 teams in one weekend is difficult, and just ladies seeing just what that next step is for them. Cross country off this weekend. They'll be back in action soon. Wrestling, you might remember I said on Friday, had their first duels of the season this weekend, and boy, did they sweep things up in Annapolis, Maryland. Wrestled Drexel first on Saturday, skunked them 33-0. That's insane. Way to go, UNC Wrestling. And then against home Navy, beat them much tighter here, 23-16. So way to go, fellas. Multiple wins in that first open last weekend, and then 2-0 in dual meets. Way to go, fellas. Love to see that. You guys, it's great to be back together to kick off a new week of Locked On Tar Heels. Football's back in action this week, hosting Wake Forest, trying to get the bowl eligibility. Men's basketball hosts American later this week. The women's basketball team plays UConn. So we're going to have to get ready for that as well. Going to be a great week of sports, all sorts of great stuff coming up. If you haven't joined the show and subscribed on video and audio, make sure you do that. We don't want you to miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels, man. This is a great place to be. We hang out, have fun, talk Tar Heels. What could be better? If you haven't joined our Locked On Tar Heels Discord, where you can have even more community surrounding the show with people that love it and love the Tar Heels, come on in, man. The link for that's in the show notes. It's free to join. A great kind of like chat board, but it's kind of like Slack if you've never done it. Would love to have you. Come for the Tar Heels, stay for the great community. And if you want to go even deeper, there's another level, Locked On Tar Heels Insiders, where you get to be part of texting me directly one-on-one. You also get access to all of my stats and charts, records book, all of that. In fact, I just shared with the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders on Sunday night a brand new data set that I've put together of all Carolina's fast break points and back to the last year, the Roy Williams era. Just want to see how this year's going to stack up against that. So I'm always putting new stats and new research together. You get free access to that. Would love to have you. All right, guys, you know the drill. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.